Welcome. I'm Jim Craddock, and this is Redacted Science. Today is Wednesday, December 10th, 2025. I am documenting a 30-year journey as a case study in a redacted medical condition. I believe that we are reaching the end of that medical condition. I'm not going to go over too much of the history today. I've done that in many previous videos. Instead, I'm going to talk about what's been going on right now. But I will cover a little bit. And so, in essence, in 1995, I developed a condition, hyponatremia, because my body would not let go of fluid. And as a result, I didn't sleep for a couple of weeks. I had a lot of issues. It was all as a result of starting on some antibiotics, threw my gut out of balance. I had a totally ulcerated stomach. They couldn't figure out what was going on, but what it was the internal candida infection. And they didn't ever figure it out. So I basically suffered through some of the worst pain you can imagine, as the lining of my abdomen basically was infected and the nerves were killed. And then with the water, I was able to not experience burning. Basically, my body was forced to drink the water. It was the only thing that would make me feel better. And so the thing you kind of latch onto when you study this condition is that you're forced down a path. You're forced into a lot of these decisions that you end up making, that you think you're making, but they're really being made for you. Because once you're on this path, it's pretty much nonstop. It has a specific ending, it has specific phases, and there are numerous of them. And what goes on over time is a breakdown of the body, a repurposing of the organs, and I've documented all of this in my book, Redacted Science. You can find it at redactedscience.org or jimcraddock.com. And basically your physiology enters into something that's currently not documented. However, it was documented. And how do I know it was documented? Because the only reason that I'm in this state is because I found the case study in a diagnostic manual that listed the original cohort of people they did this to. And it was around the turn of the 19th century, and it talked about how many years that could add to their life, 2 to 3 decades, and here I am sitting at 30 years since I did that. I have now passed 30 years since I did this to myself. So I was dying, and essentially my kidneys weren't working right because of another decision that I made, because my kidneys weren't working right. It's very complex to go into all the beginning of it. But I found this case study while I was in a mental institution because I couldn't sleep. And so I committed myself to try to, I was like, give me whatever medicine you can make that will knock me out, because I have not slept. And meanwhile, I started having all these weird side effects while I was there, just almost immediately. And so I knew that they weren't treating the right thing. I asked to look at something that they had, some books behind the counter that were medical books, and I just started reading them. And I started looking for polyuria, which was my main symptom at the time, and trying to connect it to candida. And I eventually found this thing called terminal onset diabetes insipidus with candidiasis major. and it was listed as a rare condition. It talked about how the people that had had it around the 20th or turn of the 20th century, that they had another condition which damaged their kidneys, and a large cohort of them were injected with adrenaline to see if that could restore their balance, and it did. But subsequently, they all went through these phases that the physicians then documented. Uh, and here's where it gets interesting. They documented them, and they knew all about these phases, but they were kind of restricted in their science. However, the article that I read was using science from the 1960s to explain the condition. So even if, let's say this was 1910 and you add 30 years, that's 1940. So there's no way that the cohort that I read about was the one that they learned the science from to be able to explain it in the words that I read. So there was a subsequent cohort. That's what you can know for sure. And I would put that cohort, sometime in the 50s to 60s. They developed a new test for ketones in about 1963, I think, and there was some other interesting work being done on energy pathways and stuff at that time. So I'm pretty sure that would be about the time that I would place this. This program may still be in use. I don't know. But what I do know is that right in the article itself, it said that they were going to reclassify the condition, and that was a little confusing to me. Like, why would they reclassify this condition? And it was also confusing to the author. And he expressed that you'll have to read the book for the full explanation of what the reclassification was and how it relates and how it doesn't relate. But essentially, they reclassified it to something that would look very similar in the end, easily enough to be confused, and with the purpose, and this is me, kind of being theoretical, but with the purpose of, well, because the fact is, so here I am 30 years later, no one's ever found anything wrong with me, right? So until in July, but knowing that they could just explain it away, if anybody ever did end up with this condition, it wouldn't be found until that person passed away, and then they could just explain it as this other thing. And then you wouldn't have to know that, no, this is like an alternate physiological condition. And it's honestly, it's evolutionary. And why do I say it's evolutionary? Because of all the steps that every person in the cohorts went through, that was explained with organic chemistry and talking about the gradients and all of the changes that were going on inside and ketones and just all these different things. And once again, you'll have to read the book. But these things are sequential, and they go in a specific order, and you can vary the length of them if you do the right things or the wrong things. It can be shorter or longer in each phase. But they go through these very specific phase transitions, and I can tell you these transitions are basically, they're torturous for a week or two, but there is a moment in there when the switch flips, and your body is doing something very different, and it may take some adjusting. But at each one of these, I've documented those phases in my book. And then in this last phase, which I've now been in for 3 years and 11 months, in this last phase, you go through just the way they described it was a rapid unwinding of all the previous phases, basically just kind of going backwards through them. And you're not literally going backwards through them, but the symptoms that you experience are you going backwards through them. As basically everything that the body has done to compensate over all this time finally just says, okay, I can't do anymore, and it starts unwinding the whole thing. And so that's what I've been going through for the last, almost 4 years, and I can tell you it's been very difficult. And I will tell you what makes it the most difficult is not how hard it is physically and mentally to endure the conditions. No. That's not it. What makes it so hard is the fact that they redacted it, so I don't have any type of primer on, okay, here's the sequence, here's what to expect. All I have is my memory of the article, okay? And so, and there's more than one path that people can go down, so it's very confusing to try to remember all this after all these years. Even though I read it over and over and over at the time, and looked up every word in it that I didn't know in another book that they had, and I really, I've got a degree in chemical engineering, and I've taken, cellular biology and genetics and things, so I have some grounding in the basic science of what they were talking about, but there was some of it that was definitely over my head, okay? And I've gone into in the book the things that I can, remember and explain, but there was lots of it that they explained with, advanced organic chemistry, like once again, that was not around until after the 60s. I mean, the Krebs cycle we didn't even have until the 60s, and it's fundamental to this whole thing. So anyway, so where am I today? So I have been experiencing for the last, I don't know, obviously 3.5 years, I've been having a lot of things go on. The main changes that you notice physically are to do with digestion and urination. And so you notice changes in your bowels, and you notice changes in your urinary habits, and the electrolyte content therein and things like that. But that's the only thing that you really notice. The blood tests, they always come back normal. The only thing that we finally found was I had them do a blood gas when I was at the Cleveland Clinic in July, and it showed that basically my body is definitely in a state that shouldn't allow me to be walking around, and that I'm gaining energy from some other source than regular source, because my oxygenation levels are not normal and my blood pH is not normal. So you would think, I left there and my physician said, I'm glad you made it home. And he agreed to share my book with his students or his residents. And so you would think, well, that must have led to something quick. And no, it led to, various more phases of changes and suffering. I weighed 150. I got up to, I don't know, over 170 during this last 6 months. Kind of my set point became 162 most recently. And then over the last, I don't know, couple weeks, I gained 5 pounds. Now, you're thinking, that doesn't sound like much, but you don't know. All my cells are apoptic. I literally cannot generate fat, okay, and I can't really store fluid very well in my interstitial spaces, because everything is apoptic. So there's very little room, and it's documented in this article. They talked about how, even though they would go through all these phases, that because their cells were apoptified, that they didn't gain or lose large amounts of weight. So during all this, my top was 180 something, like right before this last phase hit in 2021. And my bottom has always been about 148 to 150. Usually I hit that somewhere in the middle of a transition. As my body, one of the things that happens just about at every transition is polyuria, because what you get to is a point where electrolytes have built up so much in your system that they begin overflowing. So your body does everything it can do to get electrolytes out, which means, hey, just turn the valve and get all the water out too. And because everything is a little cross-wired with this. So it's just like, okay, turn on the valve and that will get the electrolytes out. But it really, obviously you get the water out too. So it's kind of self-defeating. So where am I right now? Let's get back to that. So I gained 5 pounds. And then in the last 2 days, I lost those 5 pounds. I've had changes in my bowel habits. And uh, over the last, oh gosh, 4 years, I've had a lot of changes. All right, and they're significant. I mean, definitely trends. Like you go one direction and you go another direction, and you know. But for the last, I don't know, year and a half or something, uh, had kind of pretty consistentness to things. Not what you would want, but pretty consistent. I'm trying to avoid being too graphic here. And then I would have these day stops where one day with no movement. And in the article, it talked about how at some point, movement stopped. And so here I am thinking, okay, well, this is the day. Like, is this when everything stops? And then I would have one the next day or whatever. So, and then okay, that wasn't day one of because it said in there that someone with this condition might just show up at the ER and walk in saying, hey, I haven't had a movement in 4 days. What's going on? And think they had like a bad stomach ache or something like that. So, so anyway, I've changed the frequency, consistency, all that, coloring has all changed, and I know you're tired of listening to all that, but that is the most significant indicator I have to indicate what's going on, and the weight. And so at this point, I think my weight will probably like begin to drop off. Continue to drop off, I should say. I don't know for sure on that, but what I do think is that I've hit the point where the liver, so this is hard to understand, but there's this concept you can read about in my book called pseudo-urine, and that's because the ureters are severed in an earlier phase, and you're thinking, okay, well, that's impossible. This person can't have severed ureters because their fluid would build up and stuff like that. Nope, because the system's got a solution for that, and the solution for that is a change in pressures in the body that causes, and the way the fluid sits, and if you look in the book, there's a diagram of the bladder and how it sits and everything, but basically, if you can get the bladder to fill up, okay, when it drains, it causes suction inside it because it's a gravity effect, okay, and so that pulls fluid through the bladder itself, through the walls, into the bladder, and the bladder is acting like a kidney at this point. If you think about it, it's acting like a filter. And so there comes a, but that causes suction internally that builds up over time, and eventually that suction gets to the point where it can damage the liver. And so that was, I think earlier this year, and I think around March. And you kind of go through some things there. You have to read about it in the book. But then there's this final step where, okay, and the liver isn't even acting like a normal liver because the main blood flow to it was cut off like literally in the first week. So it acts more like a filter with little veins and stuff, and it's a very different situation. Anyway. So when you get to the point that I'm at now, the liver itself has been exposed to sugars or alcohol, I think in this case, and so the liver has been apoptified in and of itself. Okay, and inside it has these little candidiasis cells that are basically just wrapped in salts there, and in most of the liver, and they're just wrapped in salts and this candidiasis, or conversely, maybe the candidiasis finally gets to them, and this is the apoptification itself that's going on. But essentially, what happens is, all the electrolytes, all the biliary chemicals that are stored in your liver cells themselves, okay, get squeezed out as the cell is consumed, not really consumed, apoptified would be better, so you release all those things, so bilirubin, etc. And so suddenly you get this darkening of the stool, and you get, you have a warm period. I've been quite warm for the last, I don't know, for a while, a few weeks now. It's nice to finally be warm because I spent most of this condition in a kind of chill state, often wearing thermals and just cool weather, especially during transitions. And it's weird. It's not consistent, is all I can tell you. And uh, it's not like you're freezing cold. It's just like, in my office, it's like you're an old person and you just can't tolerate cooler temperatures. Uh, and this is, from the time I was, 30 on. I always had a heater in my office and things like that. So that's where we are, I think, right now. And if we are there right now, the book said this is a pretty dramatic transition with just a couple weeks left after this point. And I know, I said earlier that the person might show up with, let's say, I haven't had a movement in 4 days. So you've got 4 days from a movement. And move today, so we got 4 days. That's all I can literally tell you at this point. It's very existential, and I go over that a lot in my blog, which is on Nostr. Everybody should join Nostr. If you don't know what Nostr is, Nostr, you need to join it. It's the future of everything. It's a decentralized architecture, a protocol, and it has built-in Bitcoin, the ability to zap Bitcoin. So basically, you could even turn it into a shopping application or various things. But I blog on Nostr, and because why do I blog there? Because people can't find it. Because I'm talking about some serious shit, and I really don't want people that are in my everyday life out there reading it. So I'm not going to put this on Facebook or Twitter. And Nostr is basically a kind of just for super geeks right now. I've been blogging about it daily, and talking about everything that I'm going through, and just trying to document this condition because it's redacted, folks. And redacting science is not cool, because exactly what I said earlier about, it's not the condition itself that sucks so much. It is the existential crisis, unending, of not knowing where you are in the path, not knowing what's next, or how much time you have, or anything like that. If you could have told me 4 years ago that I had 3 years and 11 months, it would have changed my life. I would have done so much differently in the last 4 years. Okay? But I didn't know that. And obviously, I think you can go back and say, well, you would have done things differently in the rest of your life, too. And I would have. Except for, I will say that on a level, I knew that I had this condition. Nobody would believe me. It took me a while to get to where I was 100% sure. Okay, I came out of there trying to tell my brand new doctor, who was in his 20s, hey, I've got this condition. My kidneys they're working in reverse, and and he's like, I've tested your kidneys, everything's fine, it's cool. And I'm like, you don't understand, like I don't know how to explain it to you. I've tried to get that knowledge over the years, and the only way, and I will tell you, the early gaps are so long. So you were talking about 1995, and my next major transition wasn't until I think like 2008. Okay, so 13 years, something like that, and it was horrific, I will say. I mean, just it was. And I've had a lot of existential days since then, but those first ones are even more existential because you're just filled with fear. After a while, the fear goes away a lot. It's more of just a regret or a sadness that you feel when you feel the existential nature of it. But I have finally, in 2008, I was like, okay, yeah, this is pretty real here. I'm going through all this stuff. Nobody can find anything wrong. And of course, every major transition like that, I go get every medical test done. And there's actually stuff that happens like between transitions, like you get this liver pain at times, because, like I said, and none of the normal imaging is going to find that because they don't look at the blood flow in your liver. They look at, okay, does it release biliary fluid if I inject this chemical into you? Does the structure look okay? And everything like that. And the structure and everything looks okay, supposedly, up until it gets to your pancreas in like the very final stage. Like when, and so obviously I don't believe I'm to that point yet because I'm pretty sure that'll hurt. But been through a lot of pain, so trust me, and a lot of abdominal pain, a lot of it attacked all the muscles in my legs, in my arms, in my back. It tightened everything, it loosened everything, it tightened it again, and it loosened it again, and it retightened. So that's and all of that is things like the cellular apoptification, and then when sugars hit it, they cause it to shrink more, and I can't honestly explain everything. All I can tell you is that I'm like an inch and a half shorter now. I've got osteoporosis. I have been through a lot, and so in 2013, I had another transition. It was hell. So what you have to realize is that during these transitions, your body is physiologically finding a new way to function. And so your hormones are just like off the charts, going different ways than they normally would, okay? And so you deal with like severe depression and pains, and then maybe just like complete alertness, inability to sleep, things like that. Anyway, so the 2013 transition hit me, and I remember kind of when I thought, okay, I seem to be pulling out of this, and thank God to my mom, because at the time I was married to a different woman, and I didn't want to burden her and my son with just the darkness of my days for a few weeks. And so I went and stayed with my mom she lives, I don't know, a mile away, so, and I stayed at her house, and she would feed me and, just let me do what I needed to do. And I worked my way out of it once everything kind of settled down, and I went and ran down the street, full speed, as fast as I can. I'm like, if this doesn't kill me, then I'm okay, and I'm going to keep going. But I know my life is different now. And so that's when I really made the decision of, I went with 100% certainty I have this, but, I really don't know anything else. I don't have a timeline. I don't have, anything else. I mean, I don't know when the next thing is going to occur. And I was kind of unhappy. So I got a divorce, and I got in shape, and I dated, and I found the most wonderful woman. And we got married during COVID. We had to rent out a restaurant, and it was just family, and it was wonderful. We got the minister, I don't think it's actually the minister, but we got somebody from online to do the wedding ceremony, and it was great. And you can see my pictures in there, and you can see my face is kind of puffy and stuff like that. And so at this point, I'm already gaining fluid for this next transition. So that's 2020. And so, that transition occurred the first week of 2021, or second week of 2021, like January 17th. Uh, and was it 2020, 2023? It's been yeah, so 2022, sorry. And so, it took time. And right there near the end, I weighed more than I ever had in my life. And I was so shocked because I was working out and everything. But here's the other thing is I spent about 6 months at the end of 2021. And and I just couldn't focus. I'm a coder, a manager, and I couldn't. There was this one specific problem I was trying to solve, and I could not solve it. And I knew I should be able to solve it. I mean, I knew it's kind of complex code, but I was like, my mind should be able to focus through that, and I just couldn't do it. I kept putting it off, and kept putting it off, kept putting it off. And I'll tell you what, as soon as I went through that transition, literally, and the way that transition started was, so there's this backflow, so back pressure on your inferior vena cava that kind of causes this whole condition. And so after 30, or I don't know, at that point, 25 years, whatever, that finally releases, and that sets off this final, ever unwinding of everything. So your body has been in this way for 25 years. It has this irregular back pressure on the inferior vena cava that's causing basically just chaos in your body, but your body has adapted because of the candidiasis and the pituitary kind of working not in concert against each other, but to prolong your life. They're both trying to prolong your life, realistically, because the candidiasis wants to prolong your life because it's a colony, and so it's there to absorb every bit of ATP that it can. So if it kills you, its time is going to be up. It's not going to get to absorb every bit of ATP because you're going to stop eating, right? But if you continue eating and living, you're just supplying it with endless ATP. It can then go after, different segments of your body, kind of break down over time, break through barriers, and eventually it's attacked all the cells in your body and it's populated them. But guess what? They still work. It is amazing, okay? And the book explained it, and the article did, in a lot of different ways. But it talked about how, so when cells shrink, they get closer together. So you actually become, you're hyper reflexive because the nerve transmission distance is shorter between, I guess, wherever nerves originate and transmit to the next one. And it talked about a lot of other things. But essentially, the candidiasis and the pituitary, which is the invader and the general, they're going at it. And it's a predetermined sequence of events. So here's what I'm getting to. It's predetermined. Like, you know when it starts, exactly where it's going. And how can you know that? All right? How? Because there's all these things it's levers that are going to be flipped and switches thrown and biochemical changes are going to go on, and it's all preordained. And how can that be for this 30-year sequence? That is too complex to be a disease. It's not a disease, and it's also not an infection. Okay, this is a parasite, kind of. Okay, but it's more of a coevolution. So what this means is candidiasis, okay, is a biochemical computer, and it's programmed itself through eons of attacking living things, okay, to do certain things. And when it finds a system like mine, okay, that is compromised, and the way it gets compromised is early on in 1995, you make this decision because your kidneys stop working and everything, and you cause this back pressure, and that back pressure then causes, you to be able to continue doing things, but then I'm not going to go into all of it, but let me just say you're compromised, so your immune system is compromised, so it doesn't fight off the candidiasis like it should. Now, part of it still fights, but part of it doesn't, and I don't remember the specifics there. But you get this going on, this battle, okay, and both of them want you to live a long time. And so the pituitary is doing everything it can to keep everything moving, and at the same time, the candidiasis is trying to break down every barrier it can, but do so in such a way that you aren't put into a critical state. And it's ingenious in the things that it does and attacks and the order it attacks them in, and it causes the pituitary to have to do certain things, and those things have these kind of second order effects and third order effects, and those help the candidiasis in the end. And so you get to a point where, hey, every cell's been compromised. Like you're really not. Yeah, you're just barely running on kind of what your liver can do. Okay, and so you're supposed to avoid sugars and alcohols and I'm sorry. I generally have avoided a lot of sugar through the last decade of my life. Not before that, I can tell you. Before 2013, I didn't. Once I was sure, I became much more of a hey, I like protein guy and veggies, and I tried to stay away from sugars. I never drink anything with a sugared drink except for alcohol, and I would only have one if I did drink. And pretty much I didn't drink. I would go for long amounts of times without drinking until I started dating, and then I got to where I had to have a good sized drink. Just because, it makes you relax and everything else. But still, this is like not good for my situation. It kind of, every time it accelerates a little bit. Or not, yeah, essentially, it causes things to move faster. So, it's a complex condition. And over the last 4 years, I've been through so much. But no, yeah, I've been in pain, but if I was to measure the pain that I have felt over the last, since I would say late July of this year, there's only been one day when I was just in intense pain, and it was pretty momentary. I documented it at the time. It's in my ChatGPT somewhere, and it lasted, I don't know, less than 2 minutes, and it went away, and it was, of course, abdominal, and right now I'm in pain. It would probably be enough pain that you would consult a physician, but it's just a level of pain that I can ignore. So on a level of pain, for someone like me who's had 30 years of everything from just extreme pain to, just nagging pain, this is in the, 2, maybe 3 that I'm experiencing right now. You would probably put it at like a 4 or 5, I guess. I can take what you would put, let's just say we have different pain scales. Yeah. Anyway, so why am I recording today, I guess? I think I'm recording today because I feel like there's a greater than 50% chance that I'm kind of syncing up with the ending narration in the article that talked about how everything comes to an end. And of course it's during the holidays. And of course it's during the emergence of AI and authoritarianism and Bitcoin replacing everything on a monetary scale, and the rise of China, and it's just, the world is so interesting to me, and it's probably more interesting to me right now than it has been at any point in my life. I just see so deeply into the things that are going on, and I think there's a lot of economists out there that see these things, and I think the AIs are seeing them, and they don't want you to know what's coming, but hell is coming. I don't know what that's going to take the form of, I don't know, but what I can tell you is, from a physical point of view, every country on earth is in kind of dire straits, except for, even China in some ways, but I think people have overblown that. Yeah, they don't sell that much to the United States now, but every other country on earth is going to sign up for their shit, because they've got the best stuff in the world. They got the most engineers, and guess what? In the 21st century, he who has the most engineers wins. All right, period. Because nobody's going to nuke anybody. All right, unless they're just some poor country with just no hope. Okay, because they're going to be extinguished immediately. No, the future, the wars of the future will be fought electronically. And so, I'll show you a good book here. Hold on. Let's see if I can hold this up. Let's see, you see it. Oh, I might have to. There we go. Soft War. There you go. Yeah, you should be able to find a copy of this book if you look somewhere. But I don't know if that'll be the form of the wars, if it'll be over capital like that. But, I mean, it makes sense. Definitely could. Michael Saylor is on board. Anyway. So let's look into the future. Okay, if I'm right. And I think, greater than 50% chance. And I want to say that there have been many times in my life, many times with my wife, let's say at least 4, when I've told her, okay, look, this is really serious. That's what's going on with me physically right now. I don't know if I'm going to be around anymore. Okay? And I finally just stopped doing that. I don't do it anymore. Because living in a continual state of existential existence, after a while you're kind of numb to it, and you're just like, yeah, I could tell people, but I'm probably wrong, or I might be wrong, so I'm not going to tell anything. I'm just going to be normal and do things normally. So that's what I've been doing. Been working. I will say, when this first started in 2022, I took several weeks off work just to get my head in the right place, because I knew what was going on and nobody else did. And so I started trying to write it up, and I couldn't. I couldn't make it convincing. And then I got, earlier this year in June, I went through this, I don't know what to call it. You can ask AI, but I went through this extremely clear period where my mind was thinking like so clearly, and I wasn't tired, and I could just think. And it started with some pain, and then the pain kind of went away, and had been using ChatGPT for some artwork, and then I realized it had memory, and then I was like, wow, if it's got memory, then that means I can basically tell it everything, and then we can put it together. And so that's what I did. I told it everything, and I put it together. And as I did that, that's when I came up. I had been tossing, and if you go through my videos over the last several years, I start tossing around the idea of coevolution, because I'm like, this sequence of events is preordained. And the only way that's going to happen with two biological things interacting together is if they have done that dance 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000 years worth, where that thing has learned how to manipulate everything. And so, so ChatGPT didn't tell me that, okay? I had already kind of put it together, but then I started working on it with ChatGPT, and I said, okay, so is there any other possible explanation for this, like, 3-decade-long cohabitation, if you want to look at it that way? I don't know how else to say it, with predetermined steps that had been documented and everything else. And like the obvious answer is no. Like this is obviously something that that organism, it got this far, right? And so in funguses, the way that uh, you evolve is you live the longest. Okay, he who lives the longest is the most evolved. And so if you think about it, getting into one host and staying there for 30 years, okay, and exploiting everything you can in that host, that's a pretty big win for a fungus, right? And so that's probably the most advanced form of the fungus. Uh, and, uh, and there is some evolutionary evidence to say that some changes in humans and candidiasis took place at about the same time in the past. So maybe that's when maybe we were one way, and we managed to break out of it and become another way, and yet if things go back the way they were, for example, like me, where my heart it began pumping differently, okay, because of this kind of inversion that happens at the AB and SA nodes that causes this back pressure in the inferior vena cava. If you can get those conditions to occur again, then it can resume down this path that it used to go down. Okay, in the new way humans are, it can't get there. And so it just causes all type of havoc however it can in people. All right, it usually shows up as an opportunistic infection is what they'll say. So, you're already being decimated by something else, so the candidiasis pops up and you'll notice it then. Okay, but candidiasis by itself can decimate you is what I'm saying. It's just that our bodies have adapted so that it's very difficult for it to do that. But in the right person, with the right conditions, who doesn't get the right care at the right time, it can take them down this 30-year path that is evidence of coevolution. And so why don't we know it? Like, why did they redact it? Did they redact it because they did the 1960s experiments and they figured out that people would know they did them in the 1960s or later because of the science they used to explain it? I don't know. Did they do it because the coevolutionary angle and they didn't want people to know, hey, we co-evolved with the fungus? I don't know. All right? All I know is they redacted it. And I mean, I read it. I saw the pictures. I duplicated the science on myself, and then they redacted it, so there's absolutely nowhere I can go online. No AI has ever heard of it. But if you take my book and feed it into an AI, it'll say, this looks like it makes sense to me. Okay, and every single AI you load it into will say, hey, I'd like some more evidence. But and so then what I would say is, hey, give them the rest of my documentation that I've been documenting over the last, I don't know, however long I've been doing my videos and my blog entries. So that's where I am. I'm looking at anywhere from 4 days to a week and a half. That would be my guess. Okay? Now, I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, that means I get to see Christmas. Hey, that's a win, right? I want to be wrong. I've been wrong every time before when I've said stuff like this. So, hopefully I'm wrong. But the things that I'm noticing, from temperature shifts to changes in, digestion and other things, and weight loss, and they really align with the closing narration of this condition. And I carry in my pocket. This is going to be very funny. But this is a plastic bag, and there's 3 pieces of paper in here. One of them is, and they're real worn. You probably can't tell. Yeah, you can't tell. They're real worn because I've I was carrying them without the plastic bag for so long, and they were getting just beat up in my pocket. So finally, I put a plastic bag around them, and it helps. But one of them's for anybody from the ER from an ambulance or a first responder that should ever respond to me. The second one is for the ER, if I was ever to show up in an ER, which I do not plan to do. And the third one is for the pathologist. And I have instructions on each of those. And the first two are pretty much the same. Don't do anything. You don't know what you're looking at. Nothing that you do is going to be right, because my system is completely different than any other system that you've run into before. And you will either make me suffer or do more damage than has already been done. And there's nothing that can be done. So don't try. And the third one is what I want them to look at in order to prove the science behind everything that I've said. And I thought about donating, my body to science. But the problem with that is when you donate it to a medical school, they won't give you any information about the body afterwards. You're not entitled to an autopsy or anything like that. And completely, like, you're just gone. And that is, that's a horrible way to do things, because I think that, it would be a great solution if I could just say, hey, yeah, I want people to check out my body afterwards for science. So instead, I have to get a private pathologist report. But that's fine. I don't care. It's the right thing to do. And, it's the right thing to do. And so how do I put this all together? How did I do all this? I mean, it seemed pretty natural along the way. I'm not the one that prescribed the antibiotics or the medicine that caused my stomach to get ulcerated. But I'm the one that figured it out. I'm the one that put it all together. And it's just looking at it and being the only one with all the knowledge of everything that went on. And knowing that I read the article, that I duplicated the thing, that it literally, within an hour of me duplicating it, like my whole everything was different. My temperature was different. My hunger, urination, bowel movements, everything changed within the hour that I managed to duplicate the science. So, do they not want people duplicating the science? I can understand that, because it changes you, and so you become something the system isn't built for. But should the system be built for? Like I'm a person. Should I not be able to get care? If they had not redacted this science, it would be possible for me to know more about where I am and to get, coaching on what to do when so I don't know. To me, there is no ethical dilemma here. It's just obvious. The science must be known. Like, you must unredact the science, and so that's what I've been doing since June when I started writing my book. Man, I just sat down. I wrote a whole book, documented it all. It's on IPFS. I've got my son has backups. It's on my website. I don't know how long he'll keep the website up. I've tried to give him instructions to keep it up forever, but it's real, and I think AI will find all of these things like this that they've hidden, They must have hidden more shit from us. Like if they've hidden this one, they've hidden something else. Uh, but AI will find it, and so what will AI do with it? I don't know. But that's why I've got it in all the places I've got it, is so that, hey, at some point, and I've sent it to every researcher I can think of, every evolutionary scientist, and nobody's ever responded to me, and I don't know why. I'm not some fruitcake. I'm a reasonably intelligent dude with good education who's proven himself throughout his life, doing a great job, and raising a family, and through it all, through the worst, like just dedicating myself to normal existence, uh, and so somebody will latch on, somebody will realize that, hey, he was telling the truth, and he never stopped broadcasting his condition from the time I started my book. Well, really, it starts before that, because, okay, my book starts at the very beginning, okay, and then, I've got 2 or 3 years of videos that I record every once in a while to update you on my condition, and that definitely covers all the muscular issues that I went through and things like that. So there's a lot there. And I got various medical tests done. Those are all online. Anybody can look at them. So I'm just trying to do my best to get this back into the world of science. And, we'll see how that goes. To those at work, if you ever watch this, hey, I realize we're right in the middle of a transition with stuff, got applications being developed. I've done my best. To family, I love you. And I'm so happy. I'm just happy. Yeah, I'm sad, but you have made me happy, family. I'm very lucky to have had these 30 years. And I should have died in 1995. I would have died if I hadn't found a way to save myself. So I'm just very lucky and very thankful, and I hope that you remember me as not as the sick guy. I hope you remember all the fun times, and I wish there had been more. If I had known I had almost 4 years left when this started, I'm not sure what would have been on the agenda, but there would have been more stuff on the agenda, even if I was suffering at the time. It just always seemed so existential that looking past tomorrow was very hard. And finally I got to the point where I just didn't care about dates anymore. And you may have noticed that, how I would just agree to everything. Yeah. And to everyone else who's reading or watching this or has read my book or anything else, thank you. I ask that you share it. I ask that you, do what you can to put it in front of people who will put it under consideration and get it studied. I think that, possibly, with some of the science that is theoretical in my book, there might be a lot of cool things that are possible. I also think a lot of people might choose to undergo this if all the phases are documented and there's people out there who can help them through the phases and the transitions and everything else. Because if I can make it by myself 30 years after this physiological change, I mean, that's half a life. That's almost half a lifetime, right? So let's say you could make it 40 years or 50 years. I mean, I think that that's perfectly possible. There's a lot of benefits to this condition. It keeps you from getting bacterial infections. It gives you basically greater oxygenation and energy for your brain, so you think better. You have greater endurance. Uh, there's just a lot of uh, benefits. Now then, after each transition, I will tell you, like the transitions are hard, and recovering from them is shit. And there's at least one period when physically you're not going to like the shape you're in because you have all this water that's accumulated in your skin, and you get like kind of breaths and things like that. So uh, I mean, maybe that's what happened to Elon. I mean, he kind of looks like that these days. Maybe he's transitioning. I don't know. But all I'm saying is that I think that long term, humanity needs to look at this and say, hey, is this something? Because in the future, there's going to be a lot less people, and science is going to be a lot better. And so the people left, they are going to consider some weird things that you and I can't even think about right now. And I think this should be one of them, honestly. Uh, so that's it for today, I think. I didn't really have a purpose other than just saying, here we are. We're near the end, I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm wrong. If not, if I am, I should still document this, because this is how life is with this condition, is that it's always existential. But I think it's very existential at this moment. And that's all I've got. So, hey, this is Jim Craddock, documenting terminal onset diabetes insipidus with candidiasis major. It is a redacted medical condition, and I gave it to myself 30 years ago. Basically, I mean, they could have saved me, another way, but it would have been unlikely. So that's pretty much it, guys. We'll see if there's another video. I'm not, this is a pretty good way to close things out, honestly, if it goes from here. But if I have a chance, and I'm definitely know that, hey, things have progressed, I will do another video.